and welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, the show where we talk about all the crazy stupid stuff that people do in marketing and how you cannot do those things, but instead do smart, meaningful, intentional marketing that takes you and your company wherever it is that you're trying to go. And today, we all love a conversation about AI. And I would guess we're going to have a bunch of people in the comments because usually when we do an AI episode, we do have a bunch of people in the comments. And today, specifically, we're going to be talking about the AI skills gap. And there's a lot of things that we can talk about here. And so, we have all of our guests. Everybody made it. This is great. We had some technical difficulties running up, but today we're going to talk about not specifically skill gaps just with marketers, but we have a very diverse group of panelists joining us today who touch like all areas of AI. And so what I want to do as our opportunity today is just to explore kind of the higher level, more like umbrella types of AI skills and the gaps that all of our wonderful experts see in the industry. And then we can look at how we are extrapolating them from a marketing point of view. But I just want to remind all of our lovely guests that we know you're not all marketers. Which is intentional. I get to be the marketer. You guys get to bring the AI know-how. So we can create a very robust conversation for our viewers today. If it is your first time tuning into the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, welcome. We're super happy to have you here. This is a very interactive show. And so if you happen to be watching live and you happen to have a question about AI, this is a great place for you to ask it. Not because I can answer it, but because all of our awesome panel of awesome AI people can answer it for you. So whatever that might be, if you are a marketer and you have questions about AI, or if you just have, again, kind of bigger general questions about AI related things, please feel free to pop them in the chat. Also, if you're a returning viewer, you know that you're invited to pop those things in the chat. And also, if you happen to be viewing and you are one of our viewers that knows about AI as well, please feel free to share your insights, your thoughts, your experiences in the chat as well. It will make the conversation even more robust. All right, before we jump deep into the AI skills today, let's meet all the people who are here to join us in the conversation. So I'm just going to go in the order of how you guys all entered the room. So Ithar, would you go first and let us know a little bit about who you are, and let's focus around like the role that AI plays in your life and business on a day-to-day.
Wow. Okay. First of all, thank you for having me. This is really exciting, and I'm really humbled to be with this really cool group of people. And I'm expecting a fun conversation. But my background, I ran software companies for most of my life. So I come from the tech startup scene, and I've done that for like 18 years. Some of them as CEO, some of them as different roles. About 2 years ago, a little bit more than 2 years ago, I sold my half of my business to my business partner, thinking what I want to do when I grow up kind of thing. And then ChatGPT came out. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I'm a geek, declared geek. And I'm like, oh, this is fun. And I started playing with it very early on, more or less when it came out. And I'm an investor in several businesses, and I'm a partner in a VC, and I have a lot of friends who are in different startups. So they started approaching me and say, hey, can you help us with this? Can you help us with that? And one thing led to the other. And I found myself running an AI training and consulting company. So what I do most of my time is help businesses implement AI, either through training them or training random people on courses that I teach or speaking on stages. But what it is in my life is everything, like literally day in, day out. What I do is AI implementation. In addition, I couldn't get rid of the itch, and I have a startup brewing that is not ready yet, but it's also in the AI space. And so that's even broadened the discussion that we can have on this topic.
Oh, so exciting. I love when secrets are revealed on the show. Azam, it's so great to have you. It's been a long time since we've been in a live conversation together. So super excited to bring it back. Lee, our resident AI expert on the Crazy Stupid Marketing. Tell us a little bit more about you for people who are meeting you for the first time.
All right, thanks. Well, hey, fellow guests, nice to be on here with you. Tracy, of course, we go, I mean, way back in pandemic time anyway. We go way back, 3, 4 years. Um, and
That's as
Nice.
far back as time goes now,
I
right?
think so. Yeah, yeah,
2020.
yeah. Since before ChatGPT, we've known each other. No, maybe not actually. I don't know. That's pretty long nowadays. Um, I'm Lee. I have been in the tech world for like 13 or 14 years. Primarily tech sales. But because of that, I've always been a bit of a generalist and a technology enthusiast. And so I've had the opportunity to work at some AI companies or companies that leveraged AI, even in some of the earlier days, and I've just been fascinated with it. I have a background in philosophy, so I've been thinking about AI for many, many years because it's kind of one of the great models to think about philosophical ideas about consciousness and agency and things like that. But being able to work in this kind of world is pretty exciting. So um, I worked at a AI startup that did AI detection. And during my time working there was right at the time that ChatGPT was released, and so I just poured myself into that world and learned as much as I possibly could as sort of autodidact, and eventually got to a point where I was asked to start training our company, which even had data scientists and AI engineers. I, as the one that did the company-wide training, because I was the most up to speed on the research papers and what was happening. And so I've had this real fascination with being there alongside the sort of development of generative AI as a sort of public experiment. And it's been very exciting. So over the last year, I left and started my own AI consulting, which is AI strategy. I provide sort of, state of the industry type of reports to clients, do, strategy, 5 forces analysis type of ideas and ideation, and client training and education. And I speak also in the New York area. So yeah, I spent too much time on this stuff. I was up late watching the Grok 3 announcement on X. So, if that tells you anything about me. I'm happy to be
This
here.
is why you're a resident expert on the show.
There you
because
go.
We know you're up to date.
Yeah.
Always great to have you, my friend. And if you
Thank
go visit him in New York, he'll take you to very tasty coffee shops as well.
Yes. Yeah. Whatever you need, I'll show you the best place for it in the city.
Yes. Awesome. Always great to have you. Lyra, who has a
Hi.
different type of AI background. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, definitely. And you were speaking about the pandemic and then ChatGPT, and I felt so old suddenly because it's all happened like in 3 or 4 years, but it felt like a decade. We
Yeah.
jumped so fast, and then I tried to imagine what would happen if we would have had, ChatGPT while in pandemic.
Yeah, that would have been. You'd probably get a lot more AI boyfriends and girlfriends from that too, huh?
I think we lost you for.
Yeah.
We lost the technical difficulties. Hopefully, we'll come back and we will continue to learn more about her. While we are waiting for that, Alicia, tell us a little bit more about you.
Hi. So I'm Alicia Schrin. I'm owner of AI Optimizer Corporation and Inbound Gold. I am AI is not my first deep tech. I have been on a lot of product development teams for products that won CES. So real game changers. And I will say that I'm also probably the least. How should I put this? The AI is not as impressive to me as most people who work with AI. And I'll say that crypto was more exciting than AI for what we could do with, areas we were able to achieve and things of that nature. But I've always had a fascination with deep tech since Commodore 64. I've been programming since 1986. I have always been a person who was able to see the bottlenecks in the process and technology and able to remove them to elicit growth and real revenue demand. So I come from a different background, definitely CRM, ERP, architecture base in regards to my tech beginnings. And then kind of went into, like I said, crypto, IoT, AI, and have a different take on AI and some of the things that, I look at due to the fact that I've always been the one to call out the issue that's about to erupt. So, some of the things that I enjoy most about AI and what my company is about is industry solutions, not profitability. And I can definitely talk more to that later on in the conversation. I love to hear about what you guys are working on and what achievements you've made with your businesses and your life.
Awesome. Well, before we go there, let's finish learning about Liron.
Sorry.
What
What happened is that I asked what would happen if we use ChatGPT while in COVID. So I think this would happen. It was everyone would have attacked it, and we had a crash of the system. Should I get a vaccine or not? Right. So anyway, so I'm Liron, and these days I'm leading a startup in robotics, deep tech, which is aimed to solve a big problem in agriculture, which is weed control for vegetable growers in open field. And what we're trying to do is solve this problem in light of the, labor shortage, increased problem that we have in the past few years. So we're trying to get inspiration from the way Emmanuel Wider would do an effective work and minimize and with precision and use AI to understand what the person would see, a person would do, what kind of decision they would make to take care of weeds. And we do it with robotic arms and vision, and then on top of it, AI. So pretty much in the deep tech element, but my background is in business. So, and I started my life as an analyst. So I'm a heavy user of different tools from Perplexity to others for business analysis and market analysis and deep analysis or tech on that aspect. So I'm a huge fan. Happy to discuss on both elements, technology and the use in marketing and go to markets before the marketing itself. So thanks for the opportunity to join, Tracy.
If you're looking for a better site and your solution will work on my backyard on pulling weeds out, I'm willing to volunteer my backyard as a test ground.
We'll start from a medium-sized farms and then we'll come to you. But we're trying to solve a bigger problem. But yeah.
Start with the big problem and then fix everybody's problem. Sounds like a great opportunity. Okay, so one of the things I want for those of you who are watching or listening to the replay, I want you to think about the robust amount of AI knowledge that is in this room, and it is intentionally not focused on marketing AI, like how we have it historically since we've been using AI in marketing for the last 40 years. A lot of the use cases that you might be familiar with if you're a marketer aren't represented here today. And that, again, was intentional because when we're talking about AI, this is more about the big picture, about the business impacts, about industry solutions, about these types of things. And very commonly from a marketing point of view, we get really narrowly focused specifically on generative AI, which is that content creating version of AI that you're familiar with. So before we dive even into the gaps that are associated, Who wants to talk about the different types of AI? Because it's not just generative AI. Does someone want to jump on that?
The
Yeah,
training.
well, yeah,
Trainers, go for it, trainers.
I mean, you have like the narrow AI systems have been a big part of all of our lives for a long time, whether that is the, programmatic algorithms that advertisers use, or, prediction engines, recommendation engines for, e-commerce, and lots of different kind of social media companies creating very powerful narrow AI systems. And those are developed to do a specific thing. They're typically not the kind of architecture that you're thinking of when we think of generative AI, which is what we're all talking about, which is based on the transformer. We don't have to get into that, but the point is that these are the types of technology that generate some kind of output when you give it an input, and that's why they call it generative. And whether it's text or sounds or images or math or code, you give an input and it gives you an output, so it generates. And so that's what I think we're all really excited about when we jump on these kind of things. But we have a much more history with those other kinds of AI, and there's a lot of even facial recognition things and voice recognition, and even Jan LeCun from now is head of the Meta. He basically invented the convolutional neural net, which is the AI that can translate writing into text. So being able to see numbers that were handwritten was a huge feat and a big deal and a big step in AI. But now, we take a picture of a check and send it to our bank on our banking app and deposit it that way. Well, all of that technology is very old, 25, 30-year-old technology, and it's a big step in the development of AI that is part of our lives and has been for a very long time, but this kind of moment now is different because it allows people to interact with it. Before, you didn't interact with AI. It impacted you in some way that you did or didn't know about, but this is a different type of paradigm, just because people get to throw things at it and have things bounce back, and it's very exciting in that way. But there's a lot of hype involved too, and a lot of stuff that maybe we can cut through some of that during this call as well, because they're not miracles at this point yet, and there's a long way to go for them to be the transformation I think that everyone is talking about them being.
Absolutely.
Maybe I think that the big change, if I can relate to what you were saying, is that everyone can have an access to the system, right? So
Exactly.
my kids actually have this ChatGPT on their phones because they need it for school.
Right.
So it's actually taught how to use it and build things with it and interact with it in a way that I couldn't have as a child. I didn't even have my own phone. But what I think is that it's creating like a generational leap forward, with the tools that it gives you, for the good and for the bad. A lot of the things we were calculating in our head, but at the same time, it takes you, in different places by giving these agents to the crowd. And again, for the good and the bad, it's a tool that not everyone know how to use. But I think that this is where we need to speak about responsibility in using the system.
Yeah, I think that the other thing, though, I think that is daunting and honestly is I'm gonna give you an example. I asked Google a simple question that I asked 3 years ago, and it gave me the wrong answer. And I said, "Oh my gosh, please tell me Google did not replace all its data with that beautiful enriched data it had for like 20 years of the best data that's ever been created," right? And they did. The reality of the situation is we don't have enough foundational models to really quantify whether good, bad, or indifferent is happening right now. We have like 3 different makers of foundational models that actually have smoke, even though there's hundreds in the background. You know what I mean? No one talks about Mistral. No one talks about like Lambda, all the other stuff that's out there. They don't really discuss it. My version is Claude, by the way. Like, I love Claude over everybody.
Yeah.
But everybody has their own like little things. Me personally, the bias in the systems are very apparent, alive well, and I actually don't let anybody in my family use ChatGPT as far as the kids, because the knowledge is not there. So a lot of the stuff that I would take as a test answer, if I would go by what ChatGPT, Claude, and DeepSync think, it would be wrong when I was growing up. So therefore, I cannot allow them to be the ones to teach at this point. Okay. But that's technology. Like, there's never been anything that ever came out. The first iteration was great. Okay. Microsoft was a unique thing.
Wasn't great as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, because it was,
and
like,
still
but
has
it
its
was
king
for, it was the
35
only
years later.
one. It was the only one. Like, when Windows 3.1 came out, it was the only one. It wasn't like it had competition. It wasn't like there was someone else. No one else had funding, by the way. There wasn't another country making software that could possibly compete. There's nothing there. So it was like in a sea of its own. And we were just kind of sitting there trying to figure out what was going to happen next, right? And that, what I want to say about AI is that is some of the best times, because the technology was free to evolve. Yet in AI world and where we're at now, we have so many hands on the dial, and that is going to cause us problems later on, because you don't have a shipmaster. You have all kinds of different versions of ships with no data, and nobody knows why this one's better or that one yet, until they stumble on it into one of their builds. So I think that a lot of times we're at the beginning of these foundational models. I see a lot of work that, like, Timid and some of the others who are really about this life, who like are the engineers of AI, right? And they're the ones who are saying, wait, we kind of made this, we know it's wrong, and we're trying to get it back on track. Just listen to me for a minute, right? And I think as more as we go and we listen to the people who are some of the whistleblowers and naysayers and things, and we start to put the fixes in, about 10 years from now, I really believe AI is going to be on that level that it needs to actually rationally achieve AGI, but we're not there. Not even close.
Well, I know we drifted very far away from your question, Tracy, and I apologize.
This is what we do here, by the way, for those of you who
I
are new.
apologize, but I do want to jump on this. When I speak on stages and when I teach my course, I have these 5 laws for success in the AI era. And they're more like mindset shifts that people need to make. And one of them is called the law of continuously improving compromise. So I actually think a little different than Alicia on this. And I actually think that, yes, these tools have issues. They all do. Like, none of these tools is perfect. But they're good enough for a huge variety of applications, both on our personal lives and on our work life and on social levels as well. And so I think the trick is not to wait for AGI or wait for it to be perfect, because then some people will figure out the steps in between, are going to run circles around you while you're waiting for whatever a perfect system is. And B, once there is that perfect system, then you will have to start figuring out how to actually use it. Versus if you start using it now, knowing that there are kinks and knowing that you have to figure it out, and know that there needs to be little workarounds, and know that there's compromises on each and every one of those. But as long as you're aware of the compromises, as long as you're aware of the risks, and as long as you're willing to work around them or with them, you can gain huge benefits right now. So I actually work with my kids on AI all the time. Like we use it. So yes, it can't give you the right math answer 7 out of 10 times. I agree. It will give you the right way to solve the problem, which is what I actually want them to learn.
Yeah.
It will be a great brainstorming partner for my son, which we just did for his science project. So there's things that these tools will do amazingly well if you apply them in the right way, in the right scenario, and aware of the limitations. And so I recommend to anybody not to wait for the better system that would be perfect, because you're missing out on a lot of benefits right now.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
I
think-
agree.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree.
I'm gonna jump in here
I
with
agree as
questions,
well.
because I think we have very accurately defined a gap, which is what our show is about. Because, and Lee, I've heard you say this before also, just because we talk about this a lot, is that like, there's things that people think that AI can do that it can't do, like word count. Right? Like it's just not a thing it can do. And so that does speak to what Alicia said about like the knowledge is not there, depending on how we're defining knowledge. And there is this opportunity to use it to do things so long as you're aware of the compromises. And I think I would love to focus the conversation here in terms of the gap, because I think this is where people are uninformed, especially marketers, because a lot of marketers are not deep AI enthusiasts, as you all are, and maybe even users. And so we don't have that awareness of the compromises we're making. We just like put a prompt into ChatGPT and pull it out and stick it on the corporate blog. Right?
Yeah.
And there's a gap there. So who wants to speak to some of those things? Yeah, Laurent, right?
Yeah, no, this is really great, because and really connects. It relates to what Isara mentioned, because in the next 10 years we will need to work machine and people and machine interactions will just grow more and more. Today is ChatGPT. In 5 years, I hope they will do my laundry. So, I'm going to have this little guy running here, do the laundry, separate colors, things like that, put in the right closet, things like that. So, and I think that the new generation, and this is why we also work with them, need to learn how to interact with these machines and not just with people.
Yeah.
And I'll say even more that we need to train them how to think, right? And criticize what they get back and see if this actually present their personality, if they're writing something for them, or if they brainstorm for a science project, if this is actually reflect what they wanted to say, the way they wanted to say it, and can actually help them. And if they can actually prove that this is correct, right? Because when I get something, I do some research for go-to-market, right? I want to open a new market, I want to research. So there's like the plain vanilla I'll find on Google. But now if I'm training myself for critical thinking and asking the right prompt to get to the right situation and answers, like I would do if I would Google for 10 hours, right? I will ask it in different ways in order to get the different research and put different keywords. You remember, we actually learned how to search in Google 10 years ago. Use these keywords, use these commas, use this, use that, in order to get to take the right data. We do the same with ChatGPT. We ask the question from different, 5 different places. And what we need to do is ask for references. So they need to prove us that the data we got is the right data. And we need to go back and read the data that we got. So if I'm asking, what is the number of farms in the US based on USDA data? And then I'm asking, but in 2024, and then I'm asking, split it by size, split it by revenue. And then I'm asking, where did you find it? And I get a reference and I go and read it like I would in Google. And I said, no, you're wrong. This is the wrong interpretation. I'll get back. You're correct. Here it is how I can rephrase it. And over time, the model or the agent that works with you learn you and will get more critical thinking path itself. And I think this is what we need to train our, the next generation. This is what we need to train our marketeers. Because I've been given by my, and I think Tracy, I've shared this with you, by my vendor, by my people, I got posts ready to publish. And I came back and said, this is not my tone of voice. I can't post it in my name. And then I said, it sounds the same. Like if I will do it, it will be, it will sound the same. So how are we losing all this brand identity, all the aspects in marketing that we need to create in order for people to connect, to relate, to, to reflect, losing all this, small stuff, tangible stuff that we need to get inside by assigning this task to ChatGPT. So my recommendation would be, get this ChatGPT thing and start changing words and fine tune it and play there, even if you're doing some posts using ChatGPT. So that's it. It was a long, but I think I tried to touch it.
I could say lots of things about all the brand that you touched on. But I do agree with the critical thinking component. I think this is, when we look at AI from a time saving perspective, a lot of times that doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with the critical thinking. So if I'm just going to use this because now I can generate 100 posts in the amount of time I could generate 10, but I don't think about any of those posts and wonder if that's what we would say from a brand point of view. I mean, yeah, I have more stuff, but is it stuff that's meaningful?
Yeah.
I would say that I do find, as far as posts and things of that nature, from a marketing aspect, if you just remember the rules of marketing, right? Establish your brand voice, establish your colors, establish everything, and put it in a prompt first. Then now it's like, okay, well, I know how I have to talk. Now I know what colors I'm allowed to use. Now I know the logo. Now I know all of that, and then yield from there. Boom, there you go. It's
okay.
on.
So Jen, and then I want to go to Lee, but like just because I did this, so I don't use AI to write my posts. I use it as a brainstorm partner. But I was very time crunched yesterday, and I'm doing a series of posts. And so I had one that I had created on discovery, and I wanted to create one on alignment. And so I was like, I'm gonna try this as an experiment, see what. So I loaded the discovery one, and I was like, I want to use the same tone of voice that I used in this blog post to write a blog post about alignment. Here's the headers, blah, blah, blah. It failed miserably.
Yeah.
And the thing that's interesting, like I wrote that first post, I wrote everything in there. And it still didn't do a good job. So that's why I think, and I'm not saying don't use those types of things as inputs. It's like using the inputs, I think is important, but equally, like, I don't know that we get to the point where the inputs are so good that the output is 100%. You don't need critical thinking skills. I would not get to that.
Yeah, it's harder. It's so, or maybe I'll say it's easier said than done to actually get a generative AI model to stay steered towards what you would consider your own voice. Now, if you're a celebrity and a writer and you have volumes and volumes of writing out on the web, and maybe the model is trained on the public web and it can nail your tone of voice maybe a little bit better, but the general person, especially if you're writing branded content or whatever, you're not going to have so much of a voice that these things can really nail you unless you're always steering them. I think it's difficult to get them to kind of stay where people want. But I wanted to go way back to talk about education for AI with kids and education. And it's interesting, Alicia, before it started, Isar and Tracy and I were in the room, the stage, backstage, talking about, my brother is an IT and computer guy from way back in the day, and I always had a VIC-20 and a Commodore 64 in my house growing up. So it's funny you mentioned the Commodore 64. I grew up with that in my house. I grew up with computers in my house, and now I have a cell phone that's got 16 gigs of RAM. Like, if my brother back then could even imagine 16 gigs of RAM, his mind would have been blown. But as that generation, I grew up around computers, and for me, I understand computers. What I think we need to do is, like many of us are saying, certainly, introduce AI and AI workflow to kids, prompting, pushing back on answers, reprompting, iterating, because it teaches them, if you do it the right way, to think about thinking and to think about questions and to think, what do I need to say to get what I want back, and having a critical eye. But what I worry about is kids straight up learning from AI. Because, to use an AI analogy, like these foundation models, many of them have smaller distilled model versions of themselves. They distill them down because they'll take great pieces of their training data and their knowledge and almost summarize or compact and compress these different bits of knowledge so that you have a lower fidelity piece of knowledge. So it gets the general summarized kind of points and spirit of that knowledge, but doesn't have long tail. It's not as well defined. And so these models are generally not as intelligent as the larger models, even though maybe they have the concept ideas in them, but they're distilled, fuzzy, not very deep kind of representations of that knowledge from the larger model. I think in the same way, if you teach a child to use generative AI to learn, they're going to learn a shortcut to an answer that really robs them of the process of learning a hard thing over lots of time and really becoming an expert in a problem. Even you don't have to be a scientist as a child, but if you take some time to to kind of weave your way to understand something, it's so rewarding, and it is so hard. And I think we need that struggle in the mind to understand, to really build up our inherent intelligence. And I'm worried about distilled intelligence in kids, learning just the summarized versions, only reading the quick crib notes, right? Like, I think if we can teach the learning and discovery process and the partnership, sort of, brainstorming partner type of relationship with AI, then you'll be well positioned in the future. Because, I think like Laurent was saying, the real future is embodied AI, which is the AI will be in robots or in technology that does things in the real world. So there will be a time where we again get further separated from generating the output of the model. After a while, they'll sort of respond or act in the world. So we're at that time where I think we can still gain some insight into what goes on in these embodied AI once they're kind of up and walking around. We'll still know the technology. And if you play around with it and understand, oh, you know what? Something that seems so simple for me to understand, the AI model didn't understand. And you'll kind of get when these embodied AI and robotics mess up. You'll be like, oh yeah, that's almost like, that funny, how many R's in strawberry thing that we used to ask the chatbots when you had to type to them, like to tell a robot to fold 3 socks into one pair, and they'll you have to reboot them or something, right? Like that'll be the new thing. But it's all going to change very quickly. But I think the more we can get used to interacting with the models themselves in a little bit more raw way right now, I think that's really important. And I think that's going to build a strong foundation for kids in 10 years, in the very sci-fi future we're really hurtling towards. We really are.
So
they will be the programmers of the next robots. So yeah.
I want to jump on
things you talked about. I think that sometimes people are not understanding. I come from a different place. I remember when AI, scientific calculators, like that was our AI back in the day. All right. There was there's a difference between the learning curve for the kids who knew how to show their work and the kids who didn't. I am a proponent of show my work. That's all I'm saying.
Show your work.
So I am not about to let my kids and my family dumb down. Sorry, just not on that. And I understand kids. And kids are, if you say to them, you can use this to do X, Y, and Z, they're going to literally take you at face value and they're going to do X, Y, and Z with that. They don't know to go and check the work. They don't know that, oh, you might not be able to figure out the process behind it. They're not thinking like that. They're kids.
Mm.
So
Okay,
I do
would
think
just like
it's
to-
more of a more of a just a difference in how parental situations are. It has nothing to do with necessarily AI discussion, if you will. It's just I'm an older soul and I just believe a different way. And that's simply all that is.
I want to go to Ithar next, but I also just want to say, I know it sounds like we're talking a lot about kids here, but I would like for everybody to just assume that right now you're a kid. And there's things like Alicia, this is a great example, right? Like there's things you've been told the AI can do for you. And if you're keeping yourself in that little tiny box of what you've been told, maybe it's helping you, maybe it's not helping you. So Ithar, I'd like to throw it over to you and
Yeah, I want to go back and connect what you said now to your previous question about gaps and how we use it and how we shouldn't use it and so on. And I want to address it from two different sides, from the AI side and from the human side. So from the AI side, what these tools miss the most is context. When you use these tools, they don't know who you are, they don't know your company, they don't know your department, they don't know your tone of voice, they don't know your industry, they don't know your competitors, they know none of that. We're so used to, because now this became this, from a communication perspective, it's like communicating with a person. And so you assume that if you've been working with this, it understands your work. It knows nothing about your work. And so the thing that makes these tools jump from vanilla flavor, everybody sounds the same, to holy crap, this is incredible, is you give it more context. The more context you will give it, the better off you will be with the output that it's going to give you. So that's one aspect of this. But so I always tell people, think about AI as the best intern on the planet. The best intern on the planet. However, it's still an intern. You will never call an intern into your office and say, hey, go write me this proposal for this client. You will never do that. You will sit with them for 2 hours and say, hey, listen, let me tell you a little bit about what we do and about our industry and about why we're better than our competition and about our differentiators and about this particular client that I want you to write. Like, you will do all of that because otherwise you will expect and will receive crap from the intern. It's the same thing here. The more nuance, context, and details you will provide it, examples, good examples, bad examples, information, the better it will be. And the tools themselves are now allowing us to do this. I think one of the biggest gifts that ChatGPT gave us is projects, right? Most people don't even know it exists, but it allows you to build a context library for any topic of chat and keep it in that box. So now when you're in that box, you use that context. When you go to a different box, you use a different context, and it's magical and you can do amazing things with it. So context is the gap from the tool side, from the AI side. From the human side, the biggest gap that I see is that people think that AI is magic that can jump to the final step of the process and do a great job. So I will use your example, Tracy, of writing a blog post. And people think that because they know how to write the beginning of the prompt correctly, they got it right. You are an expert, 20 years of experience, blog writer. Now write me a blog post on X. And he will write a great blog post because you told him he has experience. And you see people do this all the time. Like, okay, pause for a minute. What is the right process to write a blog post? Well, okay, what's the goal of the blog post? Oh, I don't know. Okay, so let's go back to that. Why are you writing the blog? Are you trying to share your opinion? Then the AI doesn't matter because you're trying to share your opinion. Are you trying to rank on Google? Well, there's keyword research that needs to be done as a very first step. And then there needs to be the right structure of the website, and then it needs to fit into that. And then you need to understand your target audience, and then you need to understand their pain points and what they care about and what they don't care about. And then you need to find a way to provide them value on those topics, and then combine that with a keyword research, and then you can write the blog post. Now, in each and every one of these steps, you can use AI, and it will make your work, A, faster, and B, better. Like Liron said before, you can do keyword research today in 5 minutes that would have taken you 10 hours. and it will be great. But you need to know how to do this, and you need to do this. And so you cannot skip all the back end work and jump. And I'm specifically taking an example in marketing, but the same is true in every aspect of the business. You got to do the steps in order to get the good output in the end. And AI can help you in each of the steps, but you can't just assume that if you tell it to write a great blog post, it will write a great blog post. So that's the last thing that I wanted to say, kind of like on the two sides of that equation. And the last thing that I will say with regards to finding the tone and correcting it together, I actually think, Lee, that we all have it one way or another. Meaning each and every one of us wrote 10,000 emails in the last 5 years. Now, you may or may not have them, but you usually do. Like, go to your sent items and just take that as this is how I communicate.
Mhm.
I'm lucky I have a podcast, right? Okay, so I have 160 episodes of my podcast. I can put it in transcript and say, okay, this is how I speak. All right, that's easy. But we all have that. We all wrote proposals. We all write emails. We all have some documentation of how we communicate with other people. Slack channel, like literally find where you communicated with people and say, okay, this is how I want to communicate because this is me. And we all have that. And you just dump it into a Word document and give it to the AI and say, okay, this is how I speak. This is how I want you to sound. And it actually works pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is definitely true. I totally agree. I think that's a great sort of tip. People have volumes of their own writing that you could sort of give as context to a model and go, whatever is unique about this, write in that same voice and do the output in a second. But what I mean is, if you were a public figure or something like that, and a lot of your stuff is out there, it may be trained on that stuff.
Sure.
Like, I say, hey, write it like Ezra Klein does. Well, Ezra Klein's been writing for the New York Times and podcast transcripts and all this, so I could get a good one. But that doesn't mean that, like, Gemini, like, you should be able to go, hey, and actually they've just updated so that the search remembers and can reference all of your past conversations now. So now it's not like a blank slate, like a really smart assistant that has amnesia every morning. They come to work and they're like, hey, I'm ready. Like, but like, where am I? What do you do? I'm like, okay, you're a great worker, I know, but I have to remind you because you have amnesia. Where you are, what your job is, what did you, who I am, right? But so yeah.
By the way,
that's
still problematic again, and that's why I really like projects in ChatGPT versus the long-term memory in ChatGPT and Claude and now Gemini as well. Is I run a consulting agency, and you as well. I have 20 different clients. Each and every one of them has a different memory block that it needs to have. Like not to mention, going back to what I said before, my wife and kids use my ChatGPT login, and so either thinks I'm completely schizophrenic or it's terribly confused with what it actually needs to do. And so I think again, using projects or any other, just again, use GPTs, use gems, use whatever spaces, whatever you want in each of the tools to feed it specific information for a specific topic, for a specific client, for a specific output actually works much better than the long-term memory, unless you have an account that you use for something very specific that is well-defined, and then it's absolutely awesome because then you don't have to do that. It will know it on its own.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up something when you were bringing up Gemini. Gemini almost literally stopped me from using AI completely because it quit in the middle. And and anyone who's understand, like you had just talked about, you were talking about setting up the stage. Now I'm a big set up the stage type of person. So in other words, like I'm going to look at the brand voice. I actually have them design the brand voice so that they can yield it in the way that they would understand it so that you can implement it, my guy. And so that's what I would do. But in other things like for instance, I'll take you back to a program called Meet Alfred. Okay. Now, Meet Alfred, one of the big things about Meet Alfred is this is the only program that took a coffee break, right? And I remember this clearly. And I was like, wait a minute. Exactly what coffee are you drinking? And why are you taking this said break? I was like, I thought we were getting the technology to do it, so we didn't give breaks. What is going on around here, right? And the reason why I say that is because with Gemini and some of the ways in which you're talking about the projects, by the way, you're spot on. I use it, but and something I need to preference. I do not use Chat GPT. I use the platform because I make my own GPTs. Okay, so a lot of the stuff comes from a different aspect because I'm actually making my own for different purposes, different things, and you know what I mean. Under just different types of industries I serve. So like supply chains needs its own, this one needs its own, that kind of thing. So that's one of the reasons why I talk the way I talk about Chat GPT, because I'm literally making my own versions, mini versions, as you say, the little micro dots of the actual foundation module, right? So one of the things that I believe is that the projects was definitely the best thing that Chat GPT came out with because of exactly what you're saying, clients. Brand voice is different for clients. The need is different for the clients. The yield is different for the client. Everything's different for the client. And so when you're able to put these little, as I call containers, it's like my Hadoop, right? My container. I can now make my containers of chats as opposed to just storage, right? And I have a more effective means of communicating and eliciting the results that are needed. And I'm hoping that Claude and the rest of them get on board with the projects in the future, because I think that it is something that is going to stay. And it was definitely an innovation that was in the right direction. Now, I do have a question to ask you guys. Because I'd really like to see your input on this, if you don't mind, Tracy.
Yeah, man, we have 5 minutes though. So everybody quick answers.
What do you feel about this need for speed in development with AI, and will that be the precursor to the race to the end? And what I mean by that is if you make a software in 48 hours, your competition is going to make it in 36, and then alleviate your first software. So how do you guys feel about that, and what can we do to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, so that's the AI race condition that was what I was very worried about 2.5 years ago. That has happened. It's that AI development will be profit driven, which it now is, and that it won't just be industry competing, but it will be a major geopolitical topic. Now we've seen the markets shaken by DeepSeek, and so we have a very weak sort of AI infrastructure and industry in Europe because of regulation. I agree with regulation. I think it's important, but they didn't implement it the correct way. In the US, we had some sort of sensible AI regulation and executive orders which have been peeled away, and now it's just sort of go, 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 go. Win, 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 win. We don't know what winning looks like, but it probably doesn't look like what we think it looks like, and it's a bad thing to race to win in AI. AI should benefit everyone. It should be safe, and nobody's putting enough time into thinking about any of those things, and so it's pretty concerning.
I think I will relate to the word safe in what you were saying, and it will connect to the previous discussion of clients. So as a leader of a company, I am concerned today with how my vendors are using AI to serve me and what kind of data my data is going around, and with my developers, what I allow. And Claude is disturbing me, and ChatGPT is not allowed for code, just for marketing purposes and things that will go out anyway. So yes, this is a whole new conversation about risks in business management and how these platforms are available. How do you ban how do you ban it? What kind of policy you put in place in a business? How do you work with your vendors? Our NDAs, that will need to change, because when I'm working with a service provider that is doing software as a code, they're doing a code service. I am putting, these things in place saying you cannot use your own code, which is your own product, because of IP background and because of things like that. And Now, if they're using ChatGPT and I don't have the tools to, clean it or, hide it afterwards, my code is exposed. So I'm
Yeah.
not allowing it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that, as a business, as a startup, which is, this is critical path to know that your code and your technology is not out there and, in the open. And how my vendors are open GPTs on the other side and not confusing between them is also a problem. So it's just getting more and more complicated. I think with the kids, we have some kind of control. With the vendors, it's harder.
Yes.
And I think that for marketing, this is fun, this is nice, this is good. It's not a problem because you'll see it there. But for a technology company, for an early stage one, like I need to prepare for investment rounds. I can't have all my data going on there. I'm going back to content writers that I know that can work with me. Imagine I need to write summaries and things that will go pre-IPO. I cannot use ChatGPT for that.
Absolutely.
And we need to understand. We spoke about kids, we spoke about our own elements, how we manage customers or things like that. But how technology companies or how other companies can actually, keep their secret sauce in-house, but still progress with it. And again, I just mentioned NDAs, policies, processes, so much things as leaders that we need to think about when we think AI. So the marketing side of the business, that's the easiest part.
I'm glad we ran out of time, Tracy, because if I would have went on this would have ended on a really dark note. So I'm not gonna say anything about this particular topic, and I will hand the reins back to you.
Yeah,
Okay,
you and I are probably
well,
a little bit more aligned than on the outcomes of this. Yeah.
if you're interested in hearing Ithar's point of view, make sure you reach out to him, and also make sure to reach out to all of our wonderful panelists today to continue the conversation about AI. Because Liron, you made a really great point there right at the end too, is that like we can talk about how we're using this in code or how we're using this in marketing or how we're using AI throughout the business, how we're using AI in the daily lives. But at the same time, like, are we looking at, because I do think this is the gap, right? Are we looking at the business risks? And do your marketers know what the business risks are of someone creating pre-seed pitch deck on ChatGPT or any of the other places, right? Like, maybe it's a problem, maybe it's not, but like, do you know? And right now, I believe this to be a very big gap from a marketing point of view. And I think we've been using AI in this like really tiny, narrow funnel of generating content, and for what, right? What's the business value? What are the risks, if any? If there's no business value and there's no business risk, what's the point just using it, right? I think that there's just much more conversation here. And as usual, we opened a can of worms with our panel conversation today. So I want to thank you all for contributing your wonderful insights. Again, I would recommend anyone who is in the chat to connect with these amazing individuals. They have great insights in the arena, and maybe, just maybe, by continuing the conversation, we can make that AI skills gap just a little smaller. So with that, I will say thanks again to everybody for today, and until next time, permission to do you.